All right, good morning. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the subtle things that Dragonslayer covers in his um, book. I think this is in the appendices, but I want to talk a little bit about this. I won't screen share it. I'll just look at it and share some of this information. But so on page 288, he has Magic User 101, and for me, this page should be in every OSR that uses Vancian magic and uses, the magic user style magic class, because it's the best possible advice. Not to say that this advice isn't provided in other OSRs or that it wasn't provided in, say, Gary Gygax's AD&D 1E's GM guide or something like that. But remember, I have not read that completely, and I don't own it to reference it. But another example of leaving no stone unturned in this brilliant work, the Magic User 101. When people complain about how they are not very good classes at low levels, and that's because they're trying to play them different than their actual profession. And he gives great bullet points as to what you can do to aid the group and what your role can be until you get to become stronger. And it's invaluable information for those people who think the magic user is a complete waste. And of course, people who are coming to the two OSRs from Pathfinder, from D&D 4E, from D&D 5E, of course, it's going to be a big shock because they're not going to be equal to the fighter, for instance, in level 1. They're not going to be able to, on every turn, cast a firebolt, right? And their damage, they can spam the fire a bolt, and their damage does exactly the same as the longsword. So they're shocked when they see these. But that's because you played the game differently back in the day, and because you should understand what your role is to the party, right? And gives great advice on, kind of how to strategically handle your magic user. Don't waste your your spell on the very first encounter. Study your spells, make sure you know how you can use them, etc. Do not equate combat damage with the usefulness of a spell. This is one of the things that drives me nuts about modern D20 games. Almost every spell is combat related. When we played as kids, and we still play these older games, you can use your spells in an intuitive, kind of intelligent way. They don't have to be about damage causing spells, but almost every spell, it seems to me, in modern D20 are all related to combat, which I think defeats the purpose of being a Merlin, for instance. Smart enough to use things uh to manipulate the situation, right? And then he gives advice on how some of these work, right? Some spells, how to use them, what makes them work, and like Charm Person and uh, Spider Climb and all this kind of stuff. So, sage advice, and then we get to page 289. Sage advice, 3 dimensions. Check your 6. Aim small, miss small. Meta gaming. Never split the party. Don't hold the torch, right? And my character is a magic user, and our Joff. I'm the one carrying the lantern or the torch, because as a magic user, that's really right now all I can really do for the group. But this is advice that if you're the guy holding the torch or the lantern, you're going to be the first one they see. It might be the first one they target. So I understand that as the magic user, but it's one of the things I can do to help our party, since there's not much else I can do with one spell, right? Never split the party. We've all heard this, right? It's just crazy in the old school dungeon crawl to split the party. And it's not so much even that the GM can't handle you splitting the party in two. It's literally going to cost you your lives, right? Because the GM's not going to edit what's in the room, because you cut your party down to 2 in the going west and 2 going east, and west happens to be a group of 8 goblins behind the next door. He's not going to cheat and cut that down to 1 goblin, so 2 of you can survive that encounter. That's why it's very dangerous to split the party. A GM won't fudge if they're honest about how the dungeon crawl is supposed to work, right? Meat shields, right? Use retainers, buy them now equipment, improve the morale, etc., etc. Love this, right? They're not just meat shields; they can be other things, but they certainly aid your party. I already made a video talking about the value of retainers, right? Rolling the Bones, Rolling Bones 2, Lords of Light, What is Best in Life, Rules, Lawyers, leave that shit, leave that shit out of the game, right? We don't need people flipping through the book or somebody at the table saying, well, really, you should be rolling the D6, 1D2 here. Trust me, we all want to do it when, right, when a GM can't remember the rule or a GM misremembers the rule, but, forget it, leave it out, man. That's not what the game's about. Dumber, Dumber, broadswords and spears. And I love this because I'm a huge fan of spears and broadswords being a particular type of weapon. And he outlines how those weapons could be more valuable based on how you use them. A spear can be used as it's an ultimate utility weapon. I can use it in melee, I can throw it, and I can reach with it all in one. And it's the spear shield is my favorite kind of combat style in games. And I generally pick shield and spear fighters no matter what game I'm playing, even if the game doesn't give me any kind of bonus. But I prefer uh, shield and spear warriors. Plans within plans, make it so. Mapping, be meticulous in your mapping. Ask detailed and direct questions. And again, this is something else we never do. Players should be mapping. And if you're playing on a table where they can see the map in front of them, they're never going to map. This is why mapping vanished. Right, they're looking at the table with their maps and with the map and the minis, and they don't feel like they need to map. We play theater of the mind, and as a kid we did, and the goal was, yes, somebody had to map or they were not. I wasn't going to let them readily leave the dungeon, nor was I going to recap what I already told them. So if they aren't mapping, and then they can ask a couple of direct questions, but then I'm not going to go back and tell them what direction they were headed all over again, right? But it's really sweet because then if they map well, they can look at that map and say, you know what, back there on the left, I think there might have been a secret passage. And he talks about that. Burns, cheap touchdowns, dignity, bah, space invaders, all adventurers are cremated equally, which is the truth, right? Noise and light. Thank your father, may I have another. Bring out your dead. Don't be a hero. 10-foot poles, right? The value of the 10-foot pole, all clear. Story and play. Story never precedes gameplay. Simple sentence. The story of the game emerges from play at the table. The story is the result of play. And this is a perfectly written 2-sentence explanation, right? We don't care about your story, GM, and we don't care about your backstory, player. Your backstory is for you. It informs you as to what kind of personality your character is and maybe what they're about, but we don't give a shit because you're now part of a team and we're going to do this together. We're all, in that sense, we're not concerned about your backstory. And I'm telling you, GM, we don't care about your grand tell. Just present us the problem to solve and we'll find out what happens. Anyway, and Dragonslayer TM, above all, have fun and make a great memories with your friends and family. And that's it right there, 289 in a nutshell. This is why we try to find a group to play with as kids. You play with whoever, of course, you grow up with generally, or whoever maybe you meet in high school or junior high that would like to play with you. You go out in the real world and you try to find people as you age or mature, and some of them are still old friends, etc. But you find a group and a culture of play, and that becomes your game, right? It's you might be using the same book as a group across town, but you're getting different experiences based on your culture of play. And I think these things are paramount. But these are the little things that I so appreciate about Dragonslayer. These things are in here. Again, he doesn't take for granted, right? And then, of course, page 290, carousing rules. The purpose of carousing is to provide a set of optional rules whereby player characters can earn experience by spending gold, okay? This is genius because normally we just say, hey, if you spend your gold, you'll automatically get experience for it, but you got to spend your gold. Well, these are rules for what you could be doing to spend your gold. Or I should say they're not rules, they are examples of what you can do to spend your gold that would earn you that experience as opposed to just buying more stuff, right? And it's very clever because it creates, in a way, what happens between session. It creates, in a way, what's happening when you're in town. It's very clever simulation of what you're doing between the adventure, which is very cool to me, anyway. The Dragonslayer Time Wheel is page 292. Making time can be difficult for new maze controllers. The Dragonslayer Time Wheel is designed to help monitor and manage random checks. So he's got a will here, and you just turn it for every turn, and you can glance at it to know it's time to camp. And it's actually ingenious because I've never seen somebody do this before. I wouldn't print it out and cut it out and make it, but I would certainly do ticks like I've always done, right? When I did bother to track time, I do ticks. Certainly when we do our hex crawl, my broadlands, I have a 24-hour clock. Or I should say I have a day clock, 12-hour clock, and that's basically the amount of time they can force march. And then, so as they go through the day, I do 4-hour segments in my broadlands hex crawl. So the first 4 hours of the day, the second 4 hours of the day, the third 4 hours of the day, and the final 4 hours of the day before it is so dark you would have to rest, right? So, but he's got a ticker here where you can just slide that every time to keep track, and they would see a tent pop up when it's time for them to camp. So very clever, very cool stuff. Random tables. Again, I talked about these. There are 3 sets of random tables: random coffin and sarcophagi contents, page 293, page 294, random dungeon dressings, and then 295 is random scroll and book titles. This is just what something would be called. And this stuff's very cool because it saves me having to say, what does this thing say on it? And I can just say, well, the title says the Book of the Unseen. I roll a die and it says the Book of the Unseen. That's it. I'm not going to tell you what's in it necessarily, right? So very clever. Again, all of this stuff adds up for me as the as a complete thing. Legal, right? Their legal is the SRD 5.1 Creative Commons. So this is not OGL, right? This is actually released under the SRD 5.1, by which is the Coast LLC. The SRD 5.1 is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. So it's not necessarily the OGL, which is very cool. The game is not associated or affiliated with motion picture film Dragonslayer or Paramount Pictures. So that's interesting. So he's trademarked Dragonslayer, and it is in no way referencing the title of the film, which is fascinating. I guess I don't know the legal terms, but I'm happy to see that. I wish I had thought about that. However, I don't know what it cost him to trademark Dragonslayer. Anyway, and then he has third-party license 1.0, and he has terms, right, of for licensing. So, for instance, if I wanted to write and publish my Broadlands book, my campaign book for Dragonslayer, he gives terms of how he adheres. And I'm assuming if I wanted to publish my Broadlands campaign books to focus, to use Dragonslayer as the primary, these same terms would be valid for me to respect his work too, as well, right? Anyway, I wanted to share this because I think, again, Dragonslayer is a fantastic game. And I think it is these little things, right, that he's bothered to put in the book that if you're willing to read them and you're willing to share them with your players, or you're willing to share them even with your GM, you own Dragonslayer, you've made a character you're going to play, and you remind the party, I'm playing the magic user, and I know, guys, I'm not a big help right now, but these are the things that I can do to help the party. And technically, there are job descriptions, right? What is the job description of the fighter? What's the job description of the cleric? What's the job description of the magic user? What's the job? Because let's face it, you are a team. You're an actually incorporated group of adventurers, right? And if you take it that way, you all have a role to play, and then you have role playing of a character to enjoy as well. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. Bye.